Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. So watercolor is everywhere these days, and I thought this week was the perfect opportunity with spring happening, some good vibrant color coming through. It was the perfect week to go over my tips and tricks for using watercolor texture in your artwork, but most specifically your typography. And it's really quick to do and it's really easy to do. And so this is more of a quick tip tutorial, but I still want to show you some other tricks outside of typography. So we're going to make what you see on the screen right now. We're going to make this week, and I will leave links in the video description of everything that I'm using. I'll leave you links for this background texture that you see right here. I will leave you a link for the font so you can pick up the same font that I'm using, and I am giving away 3 free watercolor textures so you can play around, get a feel for them, and you don't have to invest any money into playing around with the watercolor textures. Get comfortable with them, and if you want to take any of your artwork one step further, I've also put together a 40-piece full kit of watercolor textures that you can use on anything you want, and I'll show you a quick little preview of that. It's right here. So this week I'm giving away number 7, number 10, and number 18 right here for these abstract textures. And you'll see in this kit I've also included circle shaped textures, so these are great for logos and putting type on top of them, splatter textures for your finishing touches, and then if you want to scale up a texture but still retain these nice brushed edges, I've got these vector blobs which work the same exact way as what we're going to use for putting the texture in the typography. So as you can see, you select your blob, you select your texture, and then you mask them together, add your logo on top, and just like that you're done and you've got something really beautiful. And you can see I've got a few applications here that I threw together. This literally took me probably 20 minutes to do all 4 of these. You can see I've got a quick wedding invitation that's really beautiful and classy, social media posts which always get great attention, anything hand done, and especially with this vibrant, beautiful watercolor. Blog posts, also great for social, and custom logo. I've got plenty of free vector assets on everytuesday.com, so be sure to head over there and you can pick some of those up and begin playing around with setting them in white and putting them right on top of the texture and typesetting things. So a lot of possibilities with this kit. But for this week, I'm giving 3 of these away for free, so you can play around with those and really get used to using them. So back to the tutorial. This is what we're going to make this week, and as you can see, it's really quick and easy to do, and you can change out your texture fairly quickly. You can scale things and recolorize really easily as well. So let's get started. I'm working in Photoshop this week, so we're going to go File, New, and the document that we're going to create is letter size, but it's going to be horizontal orientation. So your width is 11 inches, your height is 8.5 inches. We're keeping resolution at 300, which is the print standard, but we're setting it in RGB. I'm doing this because you'll be able to use whatever you make for both RGB and CMYK purposes. If you want to keep it digital, you still retain the vibrancy and the high resolution. You can just res it down for any online applications, and you still have the 300 resolution. If you want to print this out, just remember to convert it to CMYK, which you can do by going Image, Mode, and then choosing CMYK. Okay, so, one other note is the free items this week, they come as high-res JPEGs that are set the exact same settings right here. The resolution's 300 and the color mode's RGB, as well as transparent PNGs. So if you want to set your texture on top of a pattern or another background texture like you see right here, you'll be able to place those on top and you won't have to mask out any white because I already did it for you. So nice little bonus this week. You get them all as high-res JPEGs and PNGs. So I'm going to hit OK right here. We have our document and we need to apply that background texture. So I'm going to double click here, hit OK, double click once more to apply a layer style. I'm going to come over here and click Pattern Overlay. I'm actually going to use one texture that I created a little bit ago. I'll also leave a link to that as well if you want to use the same texture. I'm using this concrete texture. And I want to scale it up a little bit because this is a fairly large application. So I'm just going to bump up the scale to 150 and hit OK. And now I'm going to typeset what I'm going to write. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to activate my text tool. I'm going to click once and type out my text. So I want watercolor on one line and textures on another line. So I'm going to hit Command T or Control T if you're on a PC, and I'm just going to scale this up. I'm holding Shift, grabbing a corner node and dragging, and that gets it exactly the size that I want it. And then I'm going to hit T again and type out texture, textures. Okay, same deal. I'm hitting Command T or Control T if you're on a PC. Hold Shift, grab the corner node and drag. And that looks good. And I'm using the font Hartwell, which I will leave a link to that font in the video description. So I want these to be center aligned, so I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard, click on the watercolor layer, and then I'm going to come up here and click this icon to align their centers. And you can see textures bumped over a little bit, so now I'm all centered up. So I'm going to group these two text layers together. I'm going to hit Command G or Control G if you're on a PC, and it does not matter what color this is. The color I'm using is 95, 91, 91, but it doesn't matter because we're changing the color because we're putting our watercolor texture inside. So put whatever color you want right there. Okay, so we've got our group, and now we're going to put our texture inside of it. So I'm going to go File, Place, and I'm going to choose the texture that I want. So I'm going to go to Textures. I'm in the full kit, and I think I'm going to use a circle for this one, or I can use abstract. Let's do abstract since those are the ones that I'm giving away. And I want this really vibrant yellow, orange, reddish since it's spring, and hit Place. And the next thing is I want to make sure this texture covers up all areas of the type. You can see a few edges are peeking through, so I'm going to just zoom out a little bit, hold Shift, click on a corner node, and drag it out. And you can rotate too. Feel free to do whatever you want. It's your artwork. When you're happy, just hit Enter or Return, and then come over here to the texture layer, right click, and choose Create Clipping Mask. Now you can see that this has masked it into both watercolor and textures, and it would not have done that if we had not grouped those two layers together, so that's why that's really important to do. Now you can see, like, I want a little more of the red coming through on watercolor, so maybe it kind of has a fade from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to hit Command T or Control T, and I'm just going to reposition it. That's looking really pretty. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And now I'm just going to bring in the splatters. So that's just a nice finishing touch. So I'm going to go File, Place, come over to my splatters, and let's choose a splatter. I think I'm going to use these red ones right here and hit Place. It kind of matches my type a little bit. Scale up a little more. Once again, I'm holding Shift when I drag that corner node. All right. Hit Enter or Return when you're happy, and you can see I've got some splatters that are falling right on top of my letters, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to click this little icon and create a mask. I'm going to make sure black is in front of my white because black conceals, and I want to conceal some of these. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to brush those away. There we go. Now my type's all clean. And now you can see they're kind of just resting on top of this texture, but I want it to look like they actually splattered on top of this background texture. And I've found the blend mode of linear burn to be the best for this. So over here for your blend mode drop down, I'm going to come down and choose linear burn. And that looks really good, but they are pretty dark, and I want my text to stand out more than my splatters, so I'm going to lower the opacity of my splatters to, let's go 30%. That looks good. But they are red, and I want more of like an orangish color. But since they came as red, I can change that. And I can do that by coming into my adjustments panel over here. If you don't see that, you can get to it by going Window, Adjustments, and you'll see the same thing. And I'm going to come over here where it says Hue Saturation and click that. And you can see I've got a Hue Saturation adjustment layer that's been added to my layers palette. And over here, I'm just going to drag the Hue node until my splatters start. You can see it's affecting everything because it's on the top layer, but I'm only going to look at my splatters. Ignore what's going on with the type because we can fix that very easily. So we're just going to look at the splatters, and we want to make them more of an orange than the red that they were. So that's looking more orangish to me. And to make it not affect the text that we've got, all I'm going to do is right click on that adjustment layer and choose create clipping mask, and that just masks it on top of the layer that's directly below it, which happens to be our splatter layer. Now you can see they're kind of faint, so I'm just going to bump up the opacity of the splatters to 50%, and that looks good. And these more closely match the orange in here. And actually, if you want to adjust it a little more, all you have to do is click on this little icon and you can toggle it even more if you want. That's a little more of like a yellowish orange. You can adjust the saturation if you'd like to just give the color a little more juice. Let's see. A little more vibrancy. That looks good. Okay, so once you're happy with it, save it, post it, print it, whatever you want. If you do choose to print it, make sure you go image mode and change it to CMYK before you do so. All right, so I just want to show you some other really quick applications of using watercolor textures in your own artwork. So you can see right here, I did a sample wedding invitation. All I did was place, I didn't do anything to this texture at all. I just placed it right in here, typed on top of it, and then typeset the details. Really quick, really easy. Looks very classy and clean and beautiful. Here's a social media mock-up that I showed earlier. You can see I'm using some really vibrant colors here because it is social media. And then we've got a logo mock-up, really quick and easy. Once again, I just placed the circle texture, threw in one of the vector assets that I had, and then just typeset whatever I needed right there. And then here's a blog post, which if you have a blog, you know that it's sometimes really difficult to come up with a quick, attractive idea to post in a short amount of time. So watercolor textures really help juice that up and really help you stand out on your blog. So once again, if you enjoy this tutorial, please subscribe. Don't forget to pick up your free watercolor textures this week. Also check out the links to brush script fonts, which I have found to work the best with watercolor textures because it does give the impression that it's actually brushed with that watercolor texture, where we're kind of faking it because we're masking it inside. So those work out really well. And what else? Download, check out the full set. Oh, and I will also have a link to these background textures if you want to check those out too. So thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you next week.